You only need to glance at Wild Hearts for a moment to see the similarities it shares with Capcom's Monster Hunter series. Both games are about exploring large, open areas, either alone or with other players, to find and defeat giant monsters, then harvesting and using their parts to craft better weapons and armor. Developer Omega Force has explored the genre before with the Tokiden series, and those two games represent perhaps the best examples of the monster hunting genre outside of Capcom's own influential bestsellers. With Wild Hearts, Omega Force hasn't just set out to create a simple imitation though. Sure, it has plenty of familiar elements, but the novel Karukuri system gives the game a unique identity that sets it apart from its contemporaries. In the fiction of Wild Hearts, Karukuri is an ancient technology used by hunters to conjure impressive pieces of technology out of thin air. In action, it's a fast-paced crafting system that serves multiple functions, opening up your available options both in and out of combat. You start with what are known as basic Karukuri, the first of which lets you produce a wooden crate that launches you into the air when you climb on top of it. You can stack up to 3 of these crates at once to generate extra height, which proves useful when exploring the environment, but really comes into its own when fighting Wild Heart's various monsters, known as Kemono. You can launch from these crates and transition into a devastating downward strike, or utilize the added elevation to quickly avoid an area of effect attack that spews out of a pool of lava or poisonous cloud. Erecting these Karukuri is quick and simple, so it doesn't take long before you're integrating the various devices into each combat encounter. You can also summon gigantic bouncing hammers, powerful bombs, and blinding firework cannons that can knock flying enemies out of the sky. There's something immensely satisfying about creating an apparatus out of thin air and using it to gain an advantage over a 20-foot tall monster, and the presence of these multifaceted tools doesn't dilute the tension that's inherent in the genre either. Each one costs a specific resource to build called Celestial Thread. If you run out, you can find more by hacking down trees and rocks, or by extracting chunks of it by targeting weak spots on a kimono's body. This ensures that you need to think strategically and consider when and how to use Karukuri, but it also offers extra encouragement to play with other people because you can pool all of your individual resources together. Both basic and fusion Karukuri are liable to break when met with the full force of a kimono, but there are a plethora of dragon Karukuri that persist throughout the entire game unless you opt to dismantle them yourself. Instead of using Celestial Thread, these constructions pull from dragon pits that are locked on each of the game's 4 islands. By unlocking them, you can use their resources to materialize bigger tools like zip lines, wind vortexes, and giant wheels you can clamber inside and drive. Placing these traversal tools in the world makes subsequent hunts faster, but you can also place them in other players' sessions, and they can do so in yours. Even if you're not playing with someone else at that exact moment, something they built previously might still leave a mark on your hunt, aiding your success long after they've departed. The moment-to-moment impact of Wild Hearts' Karukuri mechanic is already terrific, but adding a societal value to some of the constructions elevates it even further. When you're not building magical gizmos to assist you on the hunt, you're wielding one of 8 distinct weapon types to deal damage. These deadly accoutrements range from a nimble katana to a hefty maul and a robust hand cannon, and each one has its own idiosyncrasies, including unique weapon gauges that allow you to inflict heavy damage when a certain requirement has been met. By attacking and performing combos with the katana, for example, a gauge fills up that, when full, lets you trigger Unbound mode, transforming the sword into a bladed whip that deals additional damage for a short period of time. Elsewhere, the Karukuri staff can mutate between 5 different forms. Most of these weapons are rather straightforward, with a couple of exceptions, but any lack of depth is alleviated by how they synergize with the various Karukuri. Crafting the starting version of each weapon type is also relatively cheap, and there's a training area that explains how to perform each attack and special move, so Wild Hearts makes it easy to experiment, learn, and decide which killing tool is right for you. The weapon upgrade tree is fairly restrictive, however, forcing you to fight the same low-level monsters over and over again before you can craft some of the more powerful armaments. Whatever weapon you choose, Wild Heart's action is thrilling, if not familiar. There's a palpable sense of weight behind each weapon swing, and you need to consider when to attack so you're not locked into an animation when you need to roll out of danger. Slicing off monster parts is always gratifying, and the orchestral score conveys a sense of wonder and terror in equal measure, often evoking classic Japanese cinema with its use of traditional instruments, which contributes to each battle's awe-inspiring nature. Of course, the kimono themselves play a pivotal role in how enjoyable it is to cut them down to size. Each one is a giant mutated version of familiar wildlife. Crucially, these rampaging beasts are also fused with nature, able to strike at you with fetid fungus spores and twisting roots that violently emerge from the ground. Each kimono presents a different challenge, and learning the best strategies to take them down is a rewarding experience that encourages the full use of your extensive repertoire. The monster designs are solid from a visual point of view, but this isn't commonplace across the rest of the game. There are some beautiful sights to behold, but also plenty of others that fail to flatter due to the abundance of low-resolution textures and a general blurriness. I mention this because, despite appearances, Wild Hearts also struggles when it comes to performance. My PC exceeds the recommended system requirements, yet stuttering and frame rate issues were a nuisance throughout my playtime. Thankfully, these hitches didn't occur quite as often during combat, but I still encountered a few moments where the game would freeze for a few seconds at a time. Lowering the graphical settings didn't alleviate these technical shortcomings either, since it still performed the same at both the lowest and highest presets. A couple of updates have already yielded minor improvements, and Megaforce says more fixes are on the way, so the hope is these issues will soon be a thing of the past. The core gameplay loop of Wild Hearts doesn't deviate too far from the formula established by Monster Hunter, yet the surprising decision to center it all around a fast-paced building mechanic is a stroke of ingenuity. The Karakuri system elevates each individual part of Wild Hearts. Combat, traversal, and co-op are all improved by its presence and the way Karakuri is weaved into each component. There are some notable shortcomings that hold it back, especially when it comes to technical performance, but Wild Hearts is a welcome entry in a genre that's otherwise dominated by a single series.